I bring you fatal greeting of a country covering 274,000 square kilometers, where 7 million men and women, children refuses henceforth to die of ignorance, hunger and thirst, even though they are not yet able to have a real life. After quarters of a century as a sovereign state represented here at the United Nations, I come to this 39th section of the General Assembly to speak on behalf of a people which, on the land of these ancestors, has chosen from now on to assert it and to take responsibility for its own history, in both its positive and negative aspects, without any complex. I come here mandated by the National Council of the Revolution of Burkina Faso to express the view of my people on the problem that have been included on the General Assembly's agenda, which forms the tragedy backgrounds of the events which are sadly undermining the foundations of the world late in its 20th century. It is a world of chaos in which the human race is to impart by struggles between the great and the not so great, attacked by armed bands and subjected to violence and plunder. It is a world in which the nations, eluding international jurisdictions, command groups beyond the law, which, with guns in hand, live by preying on others and organize in the most despicable kinds of trafficking. I do not intend to enunciate dogmas here. I am neither a messiah nor a prophet. I possess no truth. My only ambition is to twofold aspiration. First, to be able to speak in a simple language, the language of the facts and clarity, on behalf of my people, the people of Burkina Faso, and secondly, and to be able to express in my own way the feeling of that mass of people who are disinherited, those who belong to that word malicious doubt, the third word, and to state, even if I cannot make them understood, the reason that have led us to rise up, all of which explain our interest in the United Nations and demands of our right, drawing strength in a clear awareness of our duties. Nobody will be surprised to hear us associate the former Upper Volta, now Burkina Faso, with the desperate rag back, the third word, which the other awards invented at the time of our independence, in order better to ensure our intellectual, cultural, economical, and political affiliation. We want to fit in there without at all justifying this great swindle of history, still less accepting that we are backward, world left behind by the West. Rather, we do so to affirm our awareness of belonging to a three-continent whole or to a state. As one of the non-aligned countries, our deeply felt conviction that I specially solidarily unite the three continents of Asia, Latin America, and Africa in the same battle against the same political traffickers and economic exploiters. Though to recognize our presence in the third world is, to paraphrase Joe Matti, to affirm that we feel on our cheek every blow struck against every other man in the world. So far, we have turned the other cheek. The snaps in the face has been rebound, and the evildoers have felt no tenderness in their hearts. They have trampled on the truth of justice. They have betrayed the word of Christ. They have turned his cross into a club, and after putting on his robes, they have turned our bodies and souls to shreds. They have obscured his message, making it a Western one, whereas we saw it as a message of a universal liberation. Now our eyes have been opened to the class struggle, and there will be no moral blood dealt against us. It must be proclaimed that there will be no salvation for our people unless we turn our backs completely on all the models that all the charlatans of that type have tried to sell us for 20 years. There can be no salvation for us unless we reject those models that can be no development without brick. Now all the new masterminds are awakened, rose by the jazzy increase of millions of men in rag and frightened by the threat to their digest of this multitude hounded by hunger. They are beginning to change their tone and are against anxiously seeking among us miraculous idea for new form of development for our countries. In order to understand this, it is necessary only to read the proceeding of innumerable colloquy and seminars. I certainly do not wish to ridicule the patient effort of those honestly intellectuals who, because they have tears to see, have observed the terrible consequences of the ravage caused in the third world by so-called development specialists. I fear that the result of all this energy seized by the prosperous of all kinds may be turned into a magic, one to be used to turn us back into a world of slavery, dressed up according to the taste of our time. This fear is justified by the fact that the African petite bourgeoisie, with its diplomas, if not that of the whole third world, is not ready, whether because of intellectual laziness or simply because it has sampled the Western ways of life, to give up its privileges. It is therefore forges that all the true political struggle requires a rigorous theoretical debate, and it refuses to do the thinking necessary in order to invent a new concept needed to wage a kind of struggle to the death that is ahead of us. A passive and pathetic consumers group, it overflows within in walls of the West, just as it overflows with the Insky Whiskey campaign in a salon where there is a dubious kind of harmony. One will search in vain. The concept of blackness or African personality now being a little outdated, for truly new idea from the brain of our so-called intellectual giants. Words and ideas come to us from elsewhere. Our professors, engineers, economists are content simply to add a little coloring, because we have brought from the European university, of which they are the product of our own diplomas, and the surface of adjective and supplementive. It is urgently necessary that our qualified personas and those who work with idea learn that there is no innocent writing. In this tempestuous time, we cannot leave it to our enemies of the past and of the present to think and to imagine and to create. We also must do so before it is too late, and it is ready that the elite, these men of Africa, of the third world, must come to their sense. In other words, they must turn their own society. They must look at this wretchedness that we have inherited, to understand that the battle for thoughts that we help the disinherited masses not only is not a vain one, but can come incredible at the international level. They must provide a faithful picture for their own people, a picture that will enable them to carry out profound change in the social and political situation, so that we can free ourselves from the foreign dominations and exploitation that can lead our states only to failure. This is something that we understood, we, the people of Burkina Faso, on that night of 4th August 1983, when the stars first began to shine in the heaven of our homeland. We had to take the lead of the pleasant uprisings of the countryside, threatened by the desertifications, exhausted by hunger and thirst, and abandoned. We had to give some sense of meaning to the revolt of unemployed urban masses, frustrated, tired of seeing the nominences of the alienated elite flashes flowing in the head of states, who offered them only false solution devised and conceived in the brain of others. We had to give ideological soul to just struggles our masses mobilized against the monstrosity of imperialism. Instead of minor short-lived revolt, we had to have revolution. The internal struggle against all domination that have noted before me, and yet others will say after me, how bread and the gaps now between the rich people and those that aspires only to have enough to eat, enough to drink, to survive and to defend their dignity. But nobody could believe how much of the food of our people has gone to feed the rich man's cow. In the case of Upper Volta, the processes were one crystal clear. We demonstrated the sense of all the calamities that have crushed the so-called developing country. The truth about aid, represented as the penance for all ill and often praised beyond all realms of reason, has been revealed. Very few countries have been so inloaded with aid of all kinds as has mine. Aid is supposed to help development, but one can look in vain what used to be upper voters to see any sign of any kind of development. The people who were in power through either naivety or class selfishness could not or less did not want to gain control over this inflow from outside or grasp the scope of it and uses it in the interest of our people. Analyzing a table that was published in 1983 by the Sahel Club, Jacques Guéry, in his book entitled The Sahel Tomorrow, concluded quite sensibly that aid to the Sahel, because of its content and because of its machineries in place, was only for the survival. He emphasized that only 30% of that aid would enable the Sahel simply to remain alive. According to Jacques Guéry, this outside aid was designed only for the continued development of the unproductive sectors, imposing intolerable burden on our small budgets, completely disrupting our countryside, creating deficit in the tough rate balance, and in fact speeding up our indebtedness. Here are just a few standard facts to describe what upper voters used to be like. 7 million inhabitants with more than 6 million prisons, infant mortality at 180 per 1,000. Life expectancy of 40 years, and illiteracy rate of 98%. If literacy is considered to mean being able to read, write, speak a language, or one's doctor for 50,000 inhabitants, 16% receiving schooling, and lastly a gross domestic product of 53,356 CFR francs. That is just over $100 per capita. The diagnosis obviously was a very bad one. The sources of the evil was political, and so only cure must be a political one. Of course, we encourage aid that can help us to manage without aid, but in general, the aid and the assistance policy must lead us to become completely disorganized, to enslave ourselves to shrink our responsibility in economic and political and cultural areas. We have chosen a different path to achieve a better result. We have chosen to establish a new technique. We have chosen to speak form of organization that are better adaptable to our civilization, abruptly and once and for all rejecting all kinds of outside dictate, so that we can create a condition of dignity in keeping with our ambitions. We refuse simple survival. We want to ease the pressure to free our countryside from medieval stagnation or repression. We want to democratize our society, to open up our mind to its universe of collective responsibility, so that we may be bold enough to invent the future. We want to challenge the administration and reconstruct it with a different kind of civil servant. We want to get our army involved with the people in productive work, remind it constantly that without patriotic training, a soldier is only a criminal with a power. And that is our political program. At the economic level, we are learning to live simply, to accept and demand of ourselves this austerity that need in order to carry our great design. Thanks to the Revolutionary Solidarity Fund, which is fed by voluntary contribution, we are now beginning to deal with the cruel question posed by the drought. We support and have applied the principles of the Declaration of Alma Ata. Expanding our primary health key, we endorse a state policy global strategy of GoBFFF advocated by UNICEF. We believe that through the United Nations Sudano-Saharan Office, the United Nations should enable those countries affected by drought to establish a medium and a long-term plan to achieve sufficiency in food. To prepare for the 21st century, we have begun by creating a special Tambola section on an immense campaign for education and training our children in a new school. The program is called Let's Teach Our Children. Through Committee to the Pen and Revolution, we have established a vast house building program, 500 units in 3 months. and we are also building roads, small water connectors, and so forth. Our economic ambition is to work to ensure that the use of the mind and the strength of each inhabitant of Burkina Faso will produce what is necessary to provide 2 meals a day and drink water. We swear that in future in Burkina Faso nothing will be done without the participation of the people of Burkina Faso themselves. Nothing that has not been decided by us, that has not been prepared by us. There shall be no more attack on our honor and dignity. Strengthened by the conviction we want our walls to cover all those who suffer, all those whose dignity has been crushed by a minority or a system. Let me say to those who are listening to me now that I speak not only on behalf of Burkina Faso, my country which I love so much, but also on behalf of all those who suffer, wherever they may be. I speak on behalf of the millions of hundreds, millions of human beings who are in ghettos because their skin is black, because they have a different kind of culture, those whose status is hardly higher than that of an animal. I suffer too. On behalf of those Indians who have been massacred, trampled and humiliated, and who for centuries have been confined for salvation, so that they do not have aspiration to any right whatsoever, so that their culture cannot be enriched through contact with other culture, including that of invader. I speak out on behalf of those who are unemployed because of a structural unjust system which has now been completely disrupted. The unemployed who have been reduced to seeing their lives as only the reflection of the life of those who have more than themselves. I speak on behalf of women throughout the entire world who suffer from a system of exploitation imposed them by men. As far as we are concerned, we are willing to welcome all suggestions from anywhere in the world that will help us to promote the full development and prosperity of women of Burkina Faso. In return, we will share with all countries the positive experience we are now undertaking with the women who are now involved at all levels of the state apparatus and social life in Burkina Faso. Women who struggle and who say with us, the slave will not shoulder responsibility to rebel, does not deserve pity. The slaves will not be responsible for his own wretchedness if he has any illusion whatsoever about the suspect indulgence shown by a master who pretend to give him freedom. Only struggle helps us to become free, and we call on all our sisters of all races to rise up to regain the right. I speak on behalf of the mothers of our poor countries who see their children dying on malaria and the hurry, on a way that to save them there are simple methods available, but which the science of the multinational does not offer to them. Preferring to invest cosmic laboratories and engaging in cosmic surgery to satisfy the whims and caprices of a few men and women who feel they have become too fat because of many calories in the rich food they consume with regularity. That must make even members of this assembly dizzy, not to mention the people of the Sahel. We have decided to adopt and popularize the methods that have been advocated by WHO and UNICEF. I speak on behalf of the child of the poor man who in hungry and who furtively eyes and help eyes up in the rich man's shop, the shop that is protected by a thick window, a window which is defended by an impossible grave, a grave guarded by a policeman in a helmet with the gloves and a buckle. The policeman placed there by the fathers of another child who comes there to serve or rather to be served, because there are the guarantees of capitalistic representativeness and norms of the system. I speak on behalf of the artist, poet, painter, sculptor, musician, actors, and so on. People of goodwill who see their art of being prostituted by the show business magicians. I cry out on behalf of the journalists who have been reduced to silence or else lie simply to avoid the hardship of unemployment. I protest on behalf of the athletes of the entire world whose muscles are being exploited by political system or by those who deal in modern slaveries of the stadium. My country is the essence of all mysteries of people, a tragic synthesis of all the sufferings of mankind, but also and above all the synthesis of the hope of our struggles. That is why I speak out on behalf of the sick who are anxiously looking to see what science can do for them. But that science has been taken over by the gun merchants. My thoughts go to all those who have been affected by the destruction of nature. Those 30 million who are dying every year, crushed by that most fearsome weapon, hunger. As a soldier, I cannot forget the obedient soldier who does what he is told, whose finger is on the trigger, and who knows that the bullet which is going to leave his gun will bring only a message of death. Lastly, I speak out indignation to think of the Palestinians who this most inhuman humanity has replaced with another people, a people whom only yesteryear were themselves being martyred at nature. I think of the valiant Palestine people, the family which has been splintered and split up and are wandering throughout the world seeking asylum. Courageous, determined, stoic, and tireless. And the Palestine reminds us of all the needs and moral obligation to respect the rights of people. Along with the Jewish brothers, they are anti-Zionists. Standing alongside my soldiers brothers of Iran and Iraq, who are dying in fratricide and suicide war, I wish also to feel close to my comrade of Chicago, who ports are beginning mine, whom towns are being bombed, and who, despite all, face up with courage and lucidities of their faith. I suffer with all this in Latin America, who are suffering from imperialist domination. I wish to stand aside by with the people of Afghanistan and Ireland, the people of Grenada and East Timor, each of those people seeking happiness in keeping with their dignity and the laws of their own culture. I rise up on behalf of all who seek in vain any forum in the world to make their voice heard and to have themselves taken seriously. Many have already spoken from this restroom. Many will speak after me, but only a few will take the richest decision. Although we are all officially considered equal, I speak on behalf of all those who seek in vain for a forum in the world where they can be heard. Yes, I wish to speak for all those forgotten, because I am a man and nothing that is human is a lion to me. Our revolution in Burkina Faso takes account of ill of all peoples. We are also inspired by all the experiences of mankind from the very first breath of the human being. We wish to enjoy the inheritance of all the revolution of the world, all the liberation struggles of the third world peoples. We are trying to learn from the great uphills and have transformed the world. We have drawn the lessons of American Revolution, the lessons of its victories against colonial domination, and the consequences of that victory. We endorse the doctrines of a non-interference on the Europeans in American affairs and non-interference by American and European affairs. In 1823, Morris said, America for Americans. We should say African for the African, Burkina Faso for the Burkina Faso. The French Revolution of 1789, which disrupted the foundation of absolutism, has taught us the rights of man linked to the rights of the people of freedom. The Great Revolution of October 1917 transformed the world and made possible the victories of the patriot, shook the foundation of capitalism, and made possible the dream of justice of the French Commune. Open to all wishes of the peoples and their revolutions, learning also from the terrible fellows that have led into truly enfranchised of human rights. We want to preserve from each revolution only that essence of purity that prohibits us from becoming servants of the societies of the others. Even though in our thinking we find that there is a community of interest amongst us, there must be no more discipline. The new international economic order for which we are struggling and we continue to struggle can be achieved only if we manage to do away with the old order, which completely inglorious, only if we insist on the replacement of which are all our in the political organization of the world, only if we realize our importance in the world and obtain the right decision making with respect to the machinery governing trade, economic and monetary affairs at the world level. The new international economic order is simply one among all other rights of the people. The right to independence, the free choice of the forms and structures of government, the right to development, and all The rights of the people is a right which can be gained only through struggles of the people. It never be obtained by any act of generosity, by any power whatsoever. I continue to have an unshakable confidence, a confidence I share with immense community of non-aligned country, that despite our people's battering rank cries of distress, our group will preserve its cohesion, strengths, its powers, collective negotiation, find alliance among all nations, and begin together with all whom can still hear us to organize a really new system of international economic relations. I agree to come to speak before the assembly because, despite the criticism of certain major contributors, the United Nations remains ideal forum for our demand, the place where the legitimacy of a country which have no voice is organized. This was expressed very accurately by the Secretary General when he wrote, "The United Nations reflect in a unique way the aspiration and the frustration of many nations and groups of all over the world. One of its great merit is that of nations, including the weak, the oppressed, and the victim of injustice. That is us, can get a hearing and have a platform even in the face of the hard realities of power. In just cause, however frustrated or disregarded, can find a voice in the United Nations. This is not a way of well-liked attribute of organization, but it is an essential one. The meaning and the scope of organization could not be better defined. Therefore, it is absolutely essential for the good of each of us that the United Nations be strengthened and provided with the means to take action. That is why we endorse the Secretary General's proposal to this end, to help the organization break the many deadlocks which have been carefully preserved by the great power in order to discredit in its eye the world. Since I recognize the admittedly limited merit of organization, I cannot but rejoice to see new members join us. That is why the delegation of Burkina Faso welcomes the admission of the 159th members of the United Nations, the state of Benuri Darussalam, the folly of those who, by a quick of fate, rule the world makes it imperative for the movement of non-aligned countries, which I hope the state of Bolivia Darussalam will soon join, to consider as one of permanent goal of its struggle the achievement of discernment, which is an essential aspect of the principal condition of our right to development. In our view, there must be serious study of all factors which have led into the calamities which have befallen the world. In this connection, President Fidel Castro stated, "Our view admirably at the opening of the 6th Conference of Head of State or Government of Non-Aligned Countries held at Havana in September 1979, when he said, $300 billion could build 600,000 schools with a capacity for 400 million children, or 60 million comfortable homes for 300 million people, or 30,000 hospitals with 18 million beds, or 20,000 factories with jobs for more than 20 million workers, or irrigation system of 150 million acres of land that with the application of technology could feed 1 billion people." If we multiply those numbers by 10, and I am assured that this is a conservative figure, we can see how much mankind wastes every year in the military field that is against peace. It is easy to see why the indignations of the people is easily transformed into rebellion and revolution in the face of the crumbs tossed to them in indignation form of the some aid, to which utterly humiliating conditions are sometimes attached. It can be understood why, in the fight for development, we consider ourselves to be tireless combatants for peace. We swear to struggle to ease tension, to introduce the principle of civilized life, international relation, and to extend this to all parts of the world. That means that we can no longer stand by passively and watch the people haggle over the concept. We reiterate our determination to work actively for peace, to take our place in the struggle for discernment, to take action in the field of international politics as a decent factor free of all hindrance by any of the big power, whatever may be their design. But the quest for peace also involves the strict applications of the right of countries to independence. On this point, the most pathetic, indeed, The most appalling example is found in the Middle East, where the arrogance, insolence, incredible stubbornness a small country, Israel, has for more than 20 years, with the unspeakable complexity of its powerful protector, the United States, continue to defy the international community. Only yesterday, Jews were consigned to the horrors of the torture room, but Israel scorned history by inflicting others the tortures it suffered. In any event, Israel, whose people we love for its courage and sacrifice of the past, should realize that the conditions for its own tranquility are not to be found in military strength financed from outside. Israel must begin to learn to be a nation like other nations, one among many. For the present, we declare from this rostrum our militant, active solidarity with the fighters, both men and women, of a wonderful people of Palestine, for we know that there is no suffering that has no end. Analyzing the economic and political situation in Africa, we cannot fail to stress our serious concern at the dangerous challenges and to the right of the people owned by the certain nation which secures and their alliance upon a floating international morality. We are naturally pleased at the decision to withdraw foreign troops from Chad so that the Champaian people themselves without intermediary can find a way to put an end to that fratricida war and finally be able to dry the tears that have been shed for so many years. But despite the progress made here and there in the struggle of African people for the economic emancipation of our continent to continue to reflect the essential realities of the contradiction between the big power and to be professed by the unbearable scourges of today's world. This is why we cannot accept and must unreservedly condemn the treatment of the people of the Western Sahara by the Kingdom of Morocco, which has been using the delaying tactic to postpone the delays of reckoning that we will in any event be forced upon it by the will of the Saharan people. I have visited the region liberated by the Saharan people, and I have come to believe more firmly than ever that nothing will stop its progress towards the total liberation of its country under the militant and enlightenment leadership of the friend T. Polisario. I do not wish to dwell too long on the questions of Moyeti and the island of Malagasy, Achin and Plango. Since the facts are clear and principally obvious, there is no need to dwell on them. Moyeti belonged to the Comoros. The island of the archipelago belonged to the Madagascar. With regard to Latin America, we welcome the initiative of the Candora group as the positive step in search for a just solution to the explosive situation in the region. Commander Daniel Ortega, speaking here 16th meeting on behalf of the revolutionary people of Nicaragua, made concrete proposal and posed some basic derivation. We hope to see peace in his country and throughout Central America and after 5th October. This is what world public opinion calls for. Just as we condemn the foreign aggression against the island of Grenada, so we condemn our foreign intervention, though we cannot remain silent about the foreign military intervention in Afghanistan. And yet there is one point that is so serious that each of us must give a very open and clear explanation of it. That questions as members can imagine. It is that of South Africa. The unbelievable insolence of that country with respect to all nations of the world, even those that support the terrorism which it has erected its own state system designed physically to liquidate the black majority of the country. And the contempt that it has shown for all our resolution constitution of the most serious and overwhelming concern of the world today. But the most tragic factor is not just South Africa has outlawed itself from the international community because of its apartheid law. Not even that it continues to occupy Namibia illegally and keep it under its colonialist and racist bust, or that it continues with impunity and to subject its neighbors to the laws of boundary. No, what is the most abject and then the most humiliating for the human consciousness is that it has made it tragedy and a matter of everyday reality for millions of human beings who have only their own bodies and the heroism of their base hands to defend themselves. Sure of the complexities of the big powers and the active support of the cardinal among them, as well as of the criminal collaborations of some pathetic African leaders. The white minority simply ignores the feeling of all those people everywhere in the world who finds savage method of what countries to be absolutely intolerable. There was a time when international bridge went to defend the honor of a nation that suffered aggression. Today, despite the organizing open ones that are suffered, all we do is vote for resolutions that do nothing more than call on a nation of pirates, which destroys a hierarchy's flower to mend its way. We shall soon be celebrating the 150th anniversaries of emancipation of slavery in the British Empire. My delegation supports the proposal of Antigua and Barbuda for the commemoration of our event, which is of a very great importance to African country and black world. For us, all that can be said throughout the world during the commemorative ceremonies must be emphasized. The terrible cost paid by Africans and the black world in the development of civilization. Nothing was given us in return, which no doubt explains the tragedy on our continent today. It is our blood that nourished the rise of capitalism that made possible our present condition of dependence and consolidated our underdevelopment. But we cannot hide the truth anymore. It cannot be ignored. The figure cannot be simply hanged away. For every black man who came to the plantations, 5 died or were crippled. And here I do not mention the disorganizations of the continent and its consequences. Why the entire world, thanks to you, Mr. President, with the help of the Secretary General, we become commemorating that anniversary and not in the truth. It will understand why we long for peace among nations and why we demand our right to develop with absolute equality through the organization and distribution of human resources. It is because we belong to one of the races that has suffered and the most that we Burkina Faso have sworn that we shall for never accept any split up of our country or any denial of justice. It is the memories of that suffering that caused us to sustain side by side with the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, against the armed bands of Israel. It is the memory of that suffering which on the one hand caused us to support the African Nation Congress of South Africa, ANC, and the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, and on the other makes absolute tolerable the presence in South Africa of men who say they are white and feel entitled on the account to set the whole world on fire. It is that memory of suffering that makes us put all our faith in the United Nations with the common responsibility, the common task, and the common hope of all of us, of us all. We demand that throughout the world, the campaign for free Nelson Mandela be intensified, so that his presence here at the next section of the General Assembly will be a victory of collective pride, a memory of our suffering as a collective pardon. An international humanitarian prize should be given for all those who have contributed to the defense of human rights through their works and research. We call for cutting our budget for the space research by 110,000 and then devoting the amount to research in the field of health and to improving the human environment, which has been disrupted by those fireworks which are harmful to the ecosystem. We also propose that the structures of the United Nations be reviewed and revised so that an end may be put to the standards of the right of veto. The preservative effects of the abuse have, of course, been offset by the vigilance of some states that possesses the veto right. However, nothing can justify that right, neither the size of the country nor its wealth. It is the argument used to justify that iniquity has been the cost paid during the Second World War. Then those nations have arrogated those rights to themselves should know that each of us has an uncle or a father who, like thousands of other innocent people recruited from the Third World to defend the rights that had been flooded by the Hitlerian Hitler, also suffered and died from Nazi bullets. Therefore, neither those major powers which miss no opportunity to question the rights of people, not be so arrogant. The absence of Africa from the club of those that have the right of vetoes is an injustice which must be ended. Lastly, my delegation will be failing in its duty if I did not call for the suspension of Israel and the pure and the simple exclusions of South Africa from the United Nations, when in the course of time those countries have done what they must do to justify their presence in the international community, then we would be only too happy to welcome them here and to guide their first step. We should likely reconfirm our confidence in the United Nations. We are grateful for the work which its agencies have done in Burkina Faso and for the presence side by side with us in the difficult times in which we are all living. We are grateful to the members of the Secretary Council for having allowed us twice this year to preside over the works of the Council. We only hope the Council will recognize the principle of the struggle against the extermination of 30 million human beings each year through hunger, which today is more devastating than nuclear weapons. Our confidence and faith in the United Nations needs me to thank the Secretary General for his visit, which we greatly appreciate. He came to see for himself the harsh realities of our life and to get true pictures of the heredity or the sahars or the tragedies of desertification. I cannot conclude without paying a tribute to the President of General Assembly, who, with his great intelligence and perception, we guide the work of this 39th section. I have traveled many thousands of kilometers to be here, and I have come to ask each member to work together to put an end to the concept of those who unreasonably to eliminate the tragic spectacle of children dying in hunger, to do away with arrogance, to ensure the triumph of legitimate rebellion of peoples, and to put an end to the use of weapons so that they can be laid down and fall silent, and to ensure that mankind will survive, and that together with the great poet novelist we call all this saint together. And soon the stars will come back to the earth where they have long begun. Soon the sun will return, the stars will shine again among the stars, and all the races of the world will gather together again after a long separation. The old Happyland families will find one another again, and every day there will be new discovery. More people will embrace one another, and then the inhabitants of the old world will come back to the earth. The ashes will be relighted in each tomb. The flames of life will be again in the old house will be rebuilt. The old times will come again, and history will be the dream of the present intended to confirm. Down with international reaction, down with imperialism, down with neocolonialism, down with puppettism, and eternal glory to the people who have struggling for their freedom, eternal glory to the people who stand shoulder to shoulder to defend their dignity, and eternal victory to the people of Africa, Latin America, Asia, and struggle. For the land or death, we shall triumph. This is a speech by the late great General Thomas Sankara, delivered by Captain Africa, aka Kelechi Ogbonna.